I've been listening to a new podcast. Well, I'm done with the podcast because it's a limited series. So I was listening to this new podcast from the Shalom Hartman Institute called Heretic in the House. I don't know if any of you listened to it. It's okay. I see. I'll tell you about it. That's great. It's probably not one of the. It is definitely not an NPR. Something that everyone's talking about. But it's from the Shalom Hartman Institute, which is a pluralistic Jewish think tank, and the idea behind it, it's from Dr. Naomi Seidman, who teaches at the University of Toronto, and it's the behind-the-scenes look at folks who are off the derech, the people who leave ultra-Orthodoxy. So if you watched, 2 summers ago, right in the heart of the pandemic, we had Netflix's Unorthodox, or there's the book, I think, of the same title, and countless others. There's a documentary about it. I forget the name of something. No, it's like the Keepers of the Faith or something. Anyway, the point is maybe you followed any of these shows that talk about people who are in the Hasidic world and they leave. And this is kind of that meta level talking about it rather than just showing it. They talk about how everyone loves those shows. Everyone loves to watch the brave people leaving their communities and oppressive communities. And this show says, well, maybe that's not entirely the case, right? Maybe it's not all. They're not all. In fact, they say they're not all hard shunned, where they're just totally cut off. It's often a soft shunning. Like, of course you're welcome back. Just wear a long dress again, or wear a kippah again, or make sure that you try to grow a beard, right? All these things that they try to do, and it's a lot more. It's not like the show where everything is just cut and dry and black and white. Well, some things are still black and white, but the point is, it's not as clear as the shows make it seem. And so there's one episode at the very end where they talk about how a lot of them hate being called brave. They hate when someone says, oh, you're so brave for leaving that community. And they list a whole bunch of reasons why. But one of them is that it comes with an opposite side of the coin, that if they're brave on one side, well, there's other people out there who don't see them as brave, who see them as maybe it's sad that they left the community, or what a shame that they're no longer following Torah the way the community does. This is what Dr. Simon says about it. She says, for the Orthodox community, we're just selfish for putting ourselves and our petty desires over family and Torah and Yiddishkeit, meaning Jewishness. But brave and selfish are two sides of the same coin. Heads, we escape from the clutches of a bunch of cultists with too many rules. Tails, we fell victim to the religion of freedom and choice. Either way that coin flips, we become one person's hero and another's bad example. What stood out to me from this is not just the pain that these people are feeling, but also the fact that, according to her, this is her view of it, that many people in the ultra-Orthodox world see non-Orthodoxy, whether that's liberal Judaism or secularism or everything in between, they see it as this religion of freedom and choice. That when you're no longer bound by the strict rules of halakha, it's all about that, do whatever you want attitude, right? That we have no obligations. We can just pick and choose whatever we want. I imagine that there are some Hasidim out there, some ultra-Orthodox Jews who they themselves must imagine liberal Jews as saying, I can do whatever I want. Give me all the pork, all of it. Give me all the pork. And actually, that's probably true. There are plenty of Jews we know who do that, but that's also not the reality, right? And so our non-Orthodox Judaism, I think, it doesn't teach this, right? It doesn't teach that it's do whatever you want. And that idea is found in this week's Torah portion. So we're in Parshat Bo, where we have the last 3 plagues plus the first Seder. And in this telling of the first Seder, God commands the Israelites, this always happens. It messes up the text, so it's all out of order. Anyway, the English says, this month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you. So this shall be the first month. Rabbi Michael Boyden, who's a progressive rabbi in Israel, he says, from here on, the Israelites will be able to plan their own time. Once they're free, the Israelites can now schedule things themselves, right? They can say when they'll go to sleep, when they'll wake up. They don't have to rely on that taskmaster coming in saying it's 6 a.m., go get to work, right? They have freedom. But Rabbi Boyden also continues, whereas the option to do whatever one wishes is attractive in a postmodern world of individualism and personal autonomy, Judaism views commitment as an essential component of true freedom. This is the foundation, I think, in many ways of Jewish life. This is the foundation of our covenant. We are free and we have laws. And it's that juxtaposition, and that's in the living in between, that yes, we're free, that's why we celebrate the Exodus, but we have to do stuff still, right? It's not just freedom from slavery, but also freedom to perform mitzvot, to study Torah, to engage in acts of justice and love. And so we are obligated, just like the ultra-Orthodox, but that obligation looks a little different, at least for me, and I assume you too. I don't see anyone here wearing black and white and long payas, right? Or I never remember the different names, the scarves, the coverings, anyway, yeah, you're all saying it, those things, right? We're different. And so how do we do this? How do we live in this freedom with obligation, but not in the way they do, right? And so I look to Rabbi Dr. Eugene Borowitz. He passed away a few years ago. He was a leading 20th and 21st century theologian, philosopher, and he basically says that traditionally we were pulled in two directions. God pulled us in one direction, the idea that there's Torah, there's law, we have to follow them, but also Yisrael, our community, pulled us in another direction. And so there's a tension between those two. A good example is kashrut. Do you keep kosher? The law says keep kosher, but each community handled that a little bit differently. And then modernity comes in and says, well, actually, what about ourselves? What about what we feel inside? Not just what some rabbi says, no offense to myself, not just what rabbi says, but also our moral feelings, right? We feel that this is right. We feel that this has meaning. And so he says we're pulled in those three ways: God, Israel, and ourself. And so yes, we have freedom, but all of those things are pulling on us as well to stay obligated. And a good example is keeping kosher, as I said. Today, we say, okay, the Torah says keep kosher, fine, whatever. We might say, but that doesn't have meaning for me. I love a cheeseburger. I don't know, whatever it is. And the community says, but Jews keep kosher. And so we're stuck somewhere in between until you find your own thing. And what's interesting to me, I use this example because I think of the community where even if you don't keep kosher, and I'm sure there are many people here who don't, and there's no judgment, even if you don't keep kosher, even if you'll have bacon-wrapped scallops, would you have milk with your steak at dinner? Probably not, right? And I'm sure there are people here who do, but for some reason there are things, right? For some people there's like, well, yeah, I'll eat bacon, but I would never do that, because there's still that communal pull, right? And it's all three of it, it's pulling us in all three directions. So the point being, we are free, but not just to do whatever we want. We are committed to moral responsibilities, ethical responsibilities, Jewish responsibilities, studying Torah, being with family, taking care of our bodies, and on and on. And so what we find is that our Judaism does look different than these Hasidim, right? And we do things differently than them. But whereas they think it's a life only about freedom and doing whatever you want, we know the truth, that it's about obligation, but navigating that obligation in our own ways, following both what we say in our hearts, what God says in the Torah, and what our community says. So may we continue to feel that pull and acknowledge those three pulls and be informed in our choices and make sure that we're making the right decisions that make us feel like we are doing the right thing to ourselves, to God, and to Israel. Amen and Shabbat Shalom. Amen. Amen. We'll take a moment to reflect on those thoughts. We now turn to page 282 for Aleinu L'Shabeach, praying for a more perfect world, a world in which all peoples, black hats, no hats, we all get along. Page 282.